So welcome everybody. Today is Wednesday, January 27th, and my name is Mike Chenoweth. I'm a technical consultant here at OpenLMS, and this is the first installment of our shared workshops in 2021 here. I'll jump to the first slide here, which is just a kind of a rough agenda here. So as you guys are probably aware, this is broken up into two sessions, one session today and one session next Wednesday, which is February 23rd. So today we're going to focus a bit more on just the general idea of the management of quizzes. We're going to talk about question banks and its use. We're going to talk about creating questions, but we're not going to talk specifically about question types. We're going to kind of hold that off until next week. And then we're going to talk about safe exam browser integration here. So first slide, and again, some of this might be a little bit basic from time to time. So as you guys are probably aware, but just general idea of the Moodle quiz. As you guys are probably all familiar with in working with OpenLMS and Moodle, is that it's a very powerful activity that it does really meet many teaching needs. There's over, I believe, 20 compatible quiz question types that are available that you can use that are compatible with OpenLMS. You can use these quizzes to test complex self-assessments with detailed feedback, or you can use them for simple, five question quiz with true false. So and again, a lot of this is probably you guys are familiar with. Things like some of the major advantages of using quizzes is you can limit the time a user can complete a quiz. So you can put a time limit on that. You can set a passing grade and unlimited attempts, so students can't pass it until they've met that passing grade. And I should have rewrote that and said haven't completed it until they've met that passing grade. We don't want it to be where they can't pass it, right? You can determine the layout of the quiz by having it all on one page, or choose other options. So again, I'll be showing a demo in a bit where we're going to go through some of these settings. And then new to 3.9 to OpenLMS Moodle 3.9 is instructors can require a password students must enter to take a quiz. This can be set actually at the site level too. So every single quiz, if an administrator wanted to say, every single quiz has to be requires a password, you can do that now in 3.9. But yeah, just a couple high level points there. A couple things to point out too, again, that some of you are probably already familiar with, is the fact that it's a two-step process to create. Yes, they will, Kim. Yeah, the slides will be in the course for download. Yep. It's a two-step process to create a quiz. Again, you guys are probably all familiar with this, but for somebody that might not be here or that might be listening to this, first you create the quiz activity, and then you set the settings. And once you do that, then you actually have to go to a different location and add the questions. So that leads me to my next slide of talking about question banks and questions themselves. So again, little known or fact that you guys are probably all aware of is the fact that questions are actually stored in question banks rather than the quiz itself. So again, for an instructor that might just be starting to use OpenLMS, when you go in and you go to the second step of creating a quiz and adding questions, in looking and adding them from the quiz area, might look like they actually, quote unquote, live in the actual quiz itself, when in fact they do live in the course question bank. So each course has its own question bank. And that question bank, what it does is it creates, edits, stores, and imports and exports questions. So question bank has quite a bit of capabilities within it. Questions can be created within the question bank also, or from the quiz activity. So again, it depends on the instructors, how the instructor wants to do that. But really, if they create it from the quiz activity, the questions will be placed in the question bank. or if an instructor might say, you know what, I'm not sure what quiz questions I'm going to use in each specific quiz, but I know I'm going to use these 40. They can start and just say, you know what, I'm going to create the 40 questions in the question bank, and then associate them with certain quizzes later. And again, just a setting that you guys are probably all familiar with is adding a random question is a great option to randomize quizzes. So I think that's something that's nice to always point out. There's just a quick link down there to how can questions be shared between courses. So I always like to put some documentation every now and then there. So. And then going on to the next slide here. So you can see I'm kind of running through the slides a bit quickly. Again, I kind of want to focus a lot on the demo part of this workshop. So again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to speak up during the presentation here. So yeah. Thanks, Andy. Yeah. So importing and exporting questions. So questions can be created one at a time, as you guys are all familiar with. But you can also import them from outside of your site. Some things to think about. Think about the question types you're using before choosing an import method. Reason why I bring that up is there's 10 different formats to import questions. Again, if you're not aware of that, there are 10 different different formats. I'll show you those a bit later in the actual demo environment. In my opinion, the Aiken and the GIFT are the most popular options. One thing is that Aiken only works with multiple choice and true false. So if you have essay questions that you want to that you'd like to create, and you don't want to go in and create them manually by hand, you can use the GIFT option. GIFT is much more flexible than the Aiken, so something to be aware of there. Drag and drop with images, just a couple highlights here. Drag and drop with images. If you want to share those with other staff or other courses, you have to export that via XML. Exporting images would not work with an option such as Aiken or GIFT or something like that. So, but with that being said, that takes me into my next, and Andy has something, or if you have multiple choice with more than one right answer, let's see, you'll need to use GIFT. Yeah, great point, Andy. Yeah. So, but that takes me into one of the more exciting parts of this presentation, in my opinion. One of the first little bit more exciting parts is a quicker way to import text to GIFT. So some of you might be saying, yeah, I understand a lot of these settings. Hopefully we're going to teach you some of these, a couple things here that you guys aren't aware of, and this might be one of them. I had mentioned, again, a lot of organizations that I've worked with, I do onboarding with organizations. A lot of organizations that I've worked with are familiar with the Aiken format. And they say, a lot of instructors are familiar with the Aiken format. They know how to import true, false, and multiple choice questions. But, what are other ways that we can, again, like I said, import essay questions, and maybe do it all at once. Maybe you want to import 10 essay questions, 10 true, false questions, and a number of other question types. What's the best way to do that? Great way to do that is using the GIFT format. Now that leads you to the question of, okay, well, a GIFT format, from a little bit that I understand, it's you have to know some coding, if you will, to create questions in the GIFT format. There's actually a Moodle test creator, as you can see here, a link that actually allows you to create GIFT questions from text questions. So, this is a tool that you can use, a free tool that you can use. How robust is this converter from your experience? How nitpicky? Yeah, so in my experience, I think it's pretty nice tool. Yeah, and you can see within this page, there's an example, paste the questions in the text area. It shows you, types of questions that you can import: single, multiple choice, wide selection, and others. But as you scroll down, I just wanted to take some time to kind of go through these help links. Types of questions managed. So it has some documentation about creating certain question types. Examples of questions as they should be pasted in the text area. So you can see here, how exactly should you paste text into this area up here. So you can see down here, if you hover over it, you can see how exactly the questions would appear. So I just want to take a moment here, and I'm going to grab these 4 question types right here. And you can see the first option is a fill in the blank. Second option is a true false. Third option is multiple choice. And the fourth option is an essay. So if I just grab these, and let's say I pasted them in there, and I said, you know what, just starting off simple, I want to learn a little bit more about this. I'm going to paste in my questions in this area, choose others here, and you don't have to fill out this detail of information at the moment if you don't want to. But if you click send, you can see you get a gift output, 4 questions, and there's a text file here. So what you can do here is, if you go into your environment, and give it a moment to get to the course there, and get into the course administration, go to the question bank, and go to import here. And what you can do is you can say, okay, I want to import this with the gift format. As you can see all these other options that I mentioned earlier. Stop on error, yes. I'm going to choose a file, and I'm just going to start with that file that I just created here. Choose upload this file, click import here, and you can see parsing questions from import file, importing the 4 questions from the file. We get green messages that all is good. You're looking at this and you might say, well, okay, how do I know that this is exactly the way I want it to be? You can come down here. There is a mention of no code here based on how I imported them. But if I go to a preview here, you can see that this is the essay question. What are your 3 most important course activities? What is the largest city in the United States? This is the true false. Horses are mammals. And then what is 4 plus 4? Oh, and I might have, actually, let me see here. I'm sorry, 4 plus, that was one that was already in there. The other one was 2 plus 2 equals, and that's a short answer, which can either be the number 4 or the letter 4, as I put in here. So number 4 or I said the letter 4, written out 4. So yeah, this is a really nice tool that, again, we'd highly encourage you all to maybe play around with and start thinking about maybe talking to your instructors about. I think, as Andy mentioned, it's something that's pretty powerful tool in our opinion, because it does give you the flexibility of importing questions that are outside of again, the Aiken format where you only have those couple options. It might take a little bit to get used to and to learn, and going through the documentation here. But we really think that this is a decent game changer if you have an instructor that needs to create 50 questions and maybe he or she has them in text format. Again, if pasting them in here, it might take a little bit of time to kind of follow the process, but it's not going one by one and going to create new question and then adding the answer and things like that. I think we feel like this is a pretty nice process here. So And I wanted to keep it very simple, just so you guys could kind of see, you just do this, and then you kind of build from there. So you say, okay, I get this, I get the hang of this, and then from this you might say, okay, I'm going to create a process and talk about instructors or talk to instructors about how this works and things like that. So I think it's something that you definitely need to take a little bit of time to get to understand. But I think once you get into it and look at the documentation, it's fairly easy to use in my opinion. So the coding here isn't too difficult. It's fairly simple, but if you wanted to learn the gift format, yeah, it's in my opinion much more difficult there. So one of the last things one of the last slides that I want to talk about before getting into the demo area was the Safe Exam browser integration. So a lot of you are probably familiar with the idea of the Safe Exam browser that's been available in OpenLMS and Moodle for years. New to OpenLMS 3.9 though, I'm not sure if you guys had a chance to take a look at the release notes that we had available in late December and early January here, but new to OpenLMS 3.9 in everybody's environments, the Safe Exam settings are now built-in quiz settings. They're built-in quiz setting options in all quizzes. So you can see on the right-hand side, Safe Exam browser. Just took a screenshot again. I'll show you in a moment what this looks like from a demo environment standpoint. But this is any instructor that is creating a quiz has the capability to use the Safe Exam browser because it is in there by default. Couple of just highlights about the Safe Exam browser, just from a bullet point perspective, there's 14 settings within the Safe Exam browser setup. So in addition to, you can see require the use of, in the screenshot, require the use of the Safe Exam browser. If you configure it manually, there are 14 settings that you could set up. Now, with that being said, from an administrative perspective, you could create a template rather than, having the instructors choose their individual settings. You could create a template and say, you can create a template and let the instructors know that, hey, all you need to do is, rather than choosing yes, configure manually, they would just have to choose a specific template and wouldn't have to go through those settings. A very important note, in my opinion, here is that students are required to download and install the Safe Exam browser software. Again, you guys might already be familiar with this, but that is something that I think is important to make note of. Again, you guys might have already done this, if you've used this tool in the past, but I think it's just something to always think about is when you're creating a quiz and the Safe Exam browser is going to be required, might be a good thing to make a note of the fact that students will have to download and install that Safe Exam browser software onto their workstation. And then there also is the ability to restrict instructors' ability to use this by use of role permissions. So, but with that being said, let me go. I'm going to jump out of the presentation here and go back into our demo environment and go through some of the things that we've already talked about. Some of these things may be a little bit more basic that you guys are already familiar with, but the idea that I had mentioned earlier is that when you create a quiz, it's a two-step process. Again, I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the fact of you go into create a quiz here and click on the quiz settings. You can call it whatever you like, sample quiz. And then you can see on the right-hand side here, this is the area where you can choose any of the settings within it. Again, a lot of these I'm sure you guys are already familiar with, the timing, grade, etc. These are a couple of things, again, that you guys may or may not have used if you put a grade to pass. You guys can, you say unlimited attempts or somebody must, if it's an 80%, a student must complete that quiz with an 80%. And if they don't do that for the first 3 tries, they're going to have to continue trying until they do. Layout is something else that I had mentioned here. Again, things that you guys are probably familiar with, but when you look at a quiz, how do you want the quiz questions laid out? Do you want one question per page, 2 questions per page, etc.? So a little practice scenario that we've set up here, again, for those of you that haven't joined one of these workshops in the past, we like to kind of take a little bit of time and do some things here, and so you guys can do some practice while we're on the workshop here. So the scenario that we put in place was an instructor would like a quiz created pulling in 5 questions randomly from a question bank, and then created with 2 true/false questions. Also, the instructor would like the quiz password protected. So I was wondering if you guys, could take a moment and log into your Sandbox environment and go through these steps to create a quiz, put a password restriction on the quiz, and use the preview option to ensure that the quiz is set up the way it should be. Can you guys? I'm not sure if you guys could take a couple minutes to kind of do that and kind of give us some feedback on any questions or comments that you have. This is usually a time where we also like to kind of share just any tips or tricks that others have too. Yes, hey Joe.
On the Sandbox environment, do you mean our Sandbox sites that for our schools, or do you have a Sandbox course for
for your specific school? Sorry about that. I should have clarified. Yeah, thanks Joe for asking. Okay, yeah, your Sandbox environment there. Yeah, so if we could just take a couple minutes to kind of do that, or anything else that you've learned today. If you want to, for example, maybe the Safe Exam browser is something that you're interested in learning a little bit more about, you can do that. This text to gift importing option too that we talked about earlier, and I'll put that back in the chat here. Again, this is a time where we like to take a little bit of time to kind of just talk about some of the things that we've learned here during the workshop here, and kind of put it to use. I know for myself, if I'm in a workshop or something like that, and I know that immediately after the workshop, I'm going to have a number of job responsibilities that I'm going to have to do. I might not put this to use, and it might slip out of my mind a little bit. So we like to take a little bit of time for everybody to say, okay, I still have this time blocked off on my calendar. Let me go into the text to gift and take a couple minutes and learn how to do that. So, and Andy, look, he has mentioned and thanks, Andy. So yeah, the permission Andy has just mentioned in the chat is the manage SEB requires a fee exam browser. So I can show you guys where that is. Yep. Great, thanks, Andy.
Yeah, sorry, the translator for links stripped off the name of the setting.
No, that's okay.
Like, well, I didn't mean to paste the link in there. But yeah, if you set that to, there's just the one setting. There are 2 settings that show up for Safe Exam inside the roles. And if you set the change SEB quiz settings to prevent from allow for the teacher role, that'll remove it from the quiz settings entirely. So.
Yeah, and I'll show you guys, and we'll have, again, let's take until quarter after for you guys just to take a moment to do any testing that you'd like to. And while you guys do that, I'm going to log into my Sandbox environment, and I'll show you guys what Andy's referring to here. Again, during these workshops, as you guys probably have noticed, that some of these things are a little basic for maybe some advanced administrators, but some of you that might not be advanced administrators, we always like to take some time and just, show everything, just to make sure that we're all on the same page here. So what we're referring to is if you go to site administration, users, permissions, and define roles. And if I go into the teacher role here, so you can see if I click on the gear icon for the teacher, and if I scroll down, this is where all of the permissions exist for the teacher role. And I'm going to pop in, should be able to pop that right in there. You can see there, change safe exam browser quiz setting, require safe exam browser. Andy had mentioned there that by default it's set to allow. If I choose prevent here, it's going to prevent my instructors from being able to do that. So that's the setting that you would want to change, Joe, if you wanted to prevent them from using that. So. And again, yeah, so just while we're talking about this here, yeah, great. Yeah, you guys will receive a follow-up email just as a reminder. In addition to, just while we're taking some time and while you guys are doing a couple of things there, hopefully, in addition to this in practice session assignments, we also have just a homework assignment for those of you that have taken these workshops in the past that we'd like you guys just to complete. And it is related to, we made one specifically related to the Safe Exam browser. It's in the finish my in practice. Great, thanks, Ed. And we'll jump into that in a moment here. The homework assignment, again, something about the Safe Exam browser related to, if you guys could, set that up, just to, again, just put it to use and show us what you've done here. We think that's, again, just putting some of the things that you learned to practice here. I think that's always helpful to do. So Ed, yeah, do you want to share with everyone what kind of what you did there and talk a little bit about it?
If you would like, I didn't do much other than I went into my junk course in the Sandbox, created a quiz quickly, and I had a whole bunch of quiz categories in there, some from a chemistry instructor that I was helping out. So I just grabbed 5 questions randomly from one of those categories, a chapter 2 thing, and put a password on there, spring 2021. Logged in, and it works fine.
Nice. Yeah, out of curiosity, how often, for those of you on the call, and how often do you guys use that random, pulling in random questions from the question bank?
From my perspective, some instructors do that.
Yeah.
Most probably do not.
Okay. Yeah, and that's kind of why I kind of wanted to highlight. I hear a lot of that too. I think it's a good tool, but again, it does have certain, it doesn't work for all courses and all quizzes, I understand too. So, yeah.
I think for our folks, most haven't organized their question banks carefully enough to use the random questions well. So I have a math instructor who is doing that well, but it requires a lot of categories for each specific skill that he wants to test, and he needs to have enough questions of that type in there so he can pull randomly. But that's my professional development focus for this spring, is helping them get those question banks organized so that things like random questions might make more sense.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's great. That's great. Good. Yeah, Kim, looks like you raised your hand there.
Yeah, I just had a discussion yesterday with an instructor. We talked about using random questions to help reduce incidents of cheating among students.
Yeah.
So she was going to implement that that practice. She was trying some other methods and wasn't having very much success, but didn't want to implement some of the some other strategies. So she was going to try that.
Good.
And then I do have one question about like maybe reducing the amount of clicks in the quiz setup, or maybe I'm just not understanding something. When you are adding questions, so when I was creating my test, I just added 2 new multiple choice questions. I just made some up, and you have to you can put the value in if you choose to there of the question when you're creating a new question. But that doesn't appear to save. When you go into your when they come over to your questions, the value it still seems to default to 1, and then you have to go back in and change the value. So in other words, my test it had 7 questions, so it was worth 7 points, but a value of 10.
Yes.
And so you have to go in and change that with the pencil to get it to match up. Does it matter if it matches up? The total, like I'm looking at what you've got up here, your maximum grade is 10, but your total marks are 2.
Yeah. No,
it does matter, right?
Say that again.
It does matter, right? I mean, if you don't change those to 5 each, your
Correct.
test won't calculate properly.
It'll
Yes.
scale.
Correct.
It'll
Yeah,
scale
yeah.
dynamically. So, but it will be confusing. So if you leave it like this, when the student looks at the quiz as they're taking it, they'll see that each question is worth one mark,
Mhm.
and then the quiz is worth 10 points, and it's up to them to decide if they feel comfortable with that or not. But then on the back end, it'll scale and say, oh, well, you got 1 out of 1 and 0.8 out of 1. So I'll scale up to, oh, look at that. You get, 8.5 or whatever that works out to. Great example I just pulled out of nowhere. So it will scale those points to the right numbers using the weighting of those marks to match the maximum grade. But I mean, I guess if you're just quickly doing something and you don't really care, it'll work out in the end. But if you're like me, you probably look at that and you're like, yeah, I don't like that. So yeah, it's worth going in and managing.
Because you want your students to see the correct value for each question.
Exactly.
Right. Because sometimes students will make a decision about whether they're going to answer a question or not based on the value and not really realizing how much value it has. So it's a little bit misleading.
That's a good point. Yeah. It really helps equip them to understand where they should put their time.
Definitely. Yeah. No, and that's something that, I've worked in support years ago, Kim, and yeah, that's something that's come up from time to time too. I see often where, a new instructor might not set it up correctly and might not change those settings, and it really confuses the students. So yeah, that's a good point.
But also, when you're creating the question, if you put the value there, it doesn't translate over into this setting. It doesn't save.
When you had said, and yeah, I heard you. So let me go into, let's add a new question, and you're saying, so let's just say multiple choice. And you're referring to choice 1, A, B, C. Let's give B 100%. Now,
No, go back up to the top.
Yeah.
Up.
Oh, default
mark.
mark. Yeah. So if I put that to, for example, 5,
Mm-hmm.
and default mark 5. So it did.
It
Yeah.
did keep it. Okay. All right. I thought that before that when I'd done that, it did not keep it. So I didn't even do it in the one I did because in the past I was
No.
sure that it had not kept it.
So
Sure.
where it fakes you out probably is in the random questions. When you add a random question, it ignores what you put in the default
Oh,
and
okay.
uses what you told the random question to be worth, so that whatever question it pulls up is always worth the same amount, regardless of which one it picked out of the random.
I got you.
Yeah, because I've been
Okay.
faked out by that before too.
Mhm.
Like, how come it's not? Oh wait, it's
Yeah.
smarter than me. All right.
Yeah. Good. Good point. Yeah. No, good question. And again, I'm glad you asked that, Kim. So, anybody else have anything that they'd like to share in terms of anything that they've been testing with, just while we've been talking here? I don't see anything else in the chat here. Yeah, I mean, we're a couple minutes short here. That's really everything that I wanted to talk about today. So let me see here. Yeah, Ed.
Yeah, I was just playing around with the Safe Exam browser and just wanted to point out that and tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I had to set up and configure a Safe Exam in a quiz before I could download something to add to the template. So I was trying to set up a template, and I didn't see any way to do that other than to load up a file. So there's no settings for the template unless you upload a file. And in order to upload the file, I needed to create one first. So I did that by doing for a quiz. I don't know.
Yeah, I might have misunderstood your question earlier, Ed, and sorry about that, because you had asked. Yeah, that's exactly what you need to do.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I kind of missed that earlier. But yeah, so I just want to show you guys. I know I saw a couple of you had logged into the training course where this is housed, and I'm guessing everybody that has joined has since. But you can see here in the open session number 1. Here's the assignment number 1. So if you guys could just complete that assignment, as you guys are probably familiar with, again, open session number 2. There's the information for next week. Little teaser for next week is we have actually a question types book that has been created by yours truly, Andy. That I think it's a really nice tool that goes through and talks about it's pulls out some of the documentation from the core Moodle documentation, but it's a really nice. I think this is a really nice tool that Andy created to kind of pull out the most important parts of each question type. And the nice thing with something like this is using the book question type is you can download this as a PDF and share it with your colleagues and things like that. So a little bit of a teaser into next week. Again, we're going to talk a bit more about question types, reports, statistics, things like that, exceptions. So we're going to focus a little bit more on the actual questions themselves. So yeah, Ed. Oh yeah, I think you were just giving a hands up to Andy. Yeah, right. Yeah, that was I think it's really cool resource that if you guys want to take a look at that prior to next week, and you have any questions or comments, feel free to do that. You can see where it's at here in the course. It's just in the introduction section. So yeah, really cool thing. So yeah, I mean, again, that's everything that I had today. Hopefully, you guys learned a couple things that you weren't familiar with here. And again, we like to use these sessions to just provide you with some tips and tricks that you might not have been familiar with. So hopefully you find this a good use of your time. And again, we'll be on at the same time next Wednesday to talk about specifically question types here. As always, if any other questions come up, feel free to reach out to us. Post questions in the chat here. So thanks everybody for joining. Again, we really enjoy working with you all, and looking forward to these workshops here in 2021, and hope you guys are too. So yeah, thanks again everybody for your time, and we'll be in touch, and have a great rest of your week.